I call the honourable member Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, if the National Party are so proud of this charter schools model, why didn't they put it in their manifesto before the last election? Why didn't they tell New Zealanders before the last election that this was what they wanted to do if they're so proud of it? Because we know that they were working on it before the last election. Even though after the election they tried to deny they weren't, the paper trail is clear. This process of charter schools started well before the election, well before the famous cup of tea that didn't turn out quite so well in the end. This whole charter schools idea was National's idea, and they didn't tell New Zealanders about it before the election. And if they're so proud of it, why is it that they don't want these schools to be subject to the Official Information Act? Right. If they're so confident these schools are going to be the model exemplars for how education should be delivered in the future, why is it that they don't want the public to understand how they're operating? Why is it that they don't want to have the same level of scrutiny applied to those schools as does currently apply to public schools? There is an absolute double standard at operating here. On the one hand, we've got the government saying, well, we want to focus on the quality of teaching. I support them in that. I also think we need to focus on the quality of teaching. I don't think that we should have unregistered teachers in classrooms. So on the one hand, state schools are all told, focus on the quality of teaching. That's the thing that matters. But you charter schools, don't worry. Do whatever you like. Doesn't matter if you've got registered qualified teachers or not. We're going to have a different standard for the charter schools. And then they say, and we want national standards. We want every school to be doing the same thing. But you charter schools, don't worry about that. We're not going to apply the national standards to charter schools. Oh no, they're going to have something entirely different. And then we say, every state school in the country needs to be reporting to parents based on the national standards. But you charter schools. You charter schools can do whatever you like, and we're not going to make you subject to the OIA. So even if you did test your kids under the national standards requirements, they wouldn't be subject to the same standards as if charter schools did test kids under national standards, they wouldn't be subject to the same transparency requirements of state schools. In this very same piece of legislation, the government is telling boards of trustees that they should have student achievement as their primary focus. Name a school board of trustees that doesn't. Name a school board of trustees made up of parents that go into it with a view not to improve the student achievement of their own kids. Name one school board of trustees that doesn't have that. And why is it that the government want to apply that standard to public schools, and yet private schools, these new charter private schools, be able to do whatever they like? They won't have that requirement. In fact, they'll be able to focus on making a profit. Nothing to stop a charter school taking taxpayer money destined for education and turning a profit out of it. Now, what is the single biggest cost in education? In delivering state education, what's the single biggest cost? Teachers. Teachers are the single biggest cost. So if they want to make a profit out of it, where are they going to get their money from? Unqualified, unregistered teachers is where they're going to get their money from. That's where they would extract their profit from. So funnily enough, this bill allows them to employ unregistered and unqualified teachers. There is a total and utter double standard here. On the one hand, this government are willing to go into every public school in the country and apply all of these extra bureaucratic requirements on them, and then on the other hand they're saying to charter schools, go off and do whatever you like. Go off and do whatever they like. That's what they say to charter schools, and they're not going to be monitored. So we could have the ExxonMobil School for Climate Studies. We could have the McDonald's School for Nutritional Studies, or the Monsanto School for Genetic Engineering, or the Destiny Church School of Scientific Discovery, because they wouldn't have to teach to the curriculum. Charter schools don't have to teach the New Zealand curriculum. So if the Destiny Church want to set up a charter school and teach creationism with unregistered, unqualified teachers, well, hey, that's okay. Under this legislation, nothing wrong with that, I heard one of the National Party members say. Because under this legislation, that's exactly what would be allowed to happen. They wouldn't have to teach to the New Zealand curriculum. They'll be able to teach, which is a fantastic curriculum. It is recognised as one of the best curriculums in the world. Other people come from around the world, they come to New Zealand and they say, you guys have got an absolutely fantastic curriculum. We wish we had something like that in New Zealand. And yet now the government is saying, oh, you charter schools, don't worry about that. Don't worry about teaching the same thing that the public schools are teaching. Teach whatever you like. There is an absolute double standard here. But let's actually go back to a really big concern that I have, and that is that the government are going to use the earthquake recovery process in Christchurch as an excuse to impose these charter schools on the people of Christchurch. And I think that's absolutely disgraceful. I think the public schools in Christchurch have done an absolutely amazing job over the last 2 years of providing stability and consistency and vital support to those kids who have been affected by the earthquake. When the earthquakes happened, some of those kids were at school for an extended period of time, and the schools did not even know whether the parents were going to be coming to collect them because they didn't know what had happened to the parents. And those schools went out of their way to look after those kids and provide those kids with stability and consistency, and they do not deserve to be the subject of this disgraceful process that the government are currently undertaking in Christchurch at the moment. And there is no other description for it than disgraceful. And what we're going to see now is the government turning around and saying, oh, why don't you have some charter schools in here as well? So the government are going to force these schools into merger and closure proposals, but in the same area and in the same site where they're proposing to close public schools or merge public schools, there is absolutely nothing that says that one of these private operators couldn't go and set up a charter school in exactly the same place. So the government could close a public school and then a charter school could open in exactly the same place. They could even potentially take over the same buildings if the government hocked them off, and this government says that's okay. So how is that process in Christchurch that they're undertaking now, supposedly around genuine consultation, we haven't made up our mind yet, we're just going to go out there and announce a whole lot of concrete proposals, how is that process supposed to have any integrity and credibility when public schools could be closed to make way for charter schools? I think that's disgraceful. I don't think that the kids of Christchurch deserve that. I don't think that they should be made the guinea pigs for this government's charter schools experiment, one that they have been working on for some time and that they did not tell the New Zealand public about before the last election. I want to turn to the comments the Prime Minister John Key has made. He said earlier this year, and I'll quote directly from him, "It's not the class sizes that matter, it's the quality of teaching that we're getting in our schools." John Key said that. He said, it's not the class sizes that matter, it's the quality of teaching that we're getting in our schools. But that's okay. We won't have any requirements on class sizes in charter schools. We won't have any requirements on teacher quality in charter schools. Oh, that's all okay. And then he says, don't get too hung up about it. That's what the Prime Minister said. He said to people who are worried about having unqualified teachers, don't get too hung up about it. I'm sure he's relaxed about it. I'm sure he's very, very relaxed about it. Because the government's education agenda is all at sea. The one idea that they've managed to come up with to improve teacher quality in the time that they have been in government was to increase class sizes. That was the one thing that they've come up with so far to increase the quality of teaching. All of their other major education initiatives have been about testing and form filling and bureaucratic exercises. The only thing they could come up with to improve teacher quality was to increase the size of classes. It's no wonder that the New Zealand public and the parents in particular are getting concerned about the national government, because their own officials, the experts who provided them advice on this, have said, and I quote, "The potential for negative impact on students' education from teachers who do not meet the minimum standard for the profession is high." That was advice that the government received. They've received further advice that says these proposals around unqualified and unregistered teachers could, quote, significantly damage the credibility of the Crown. That was the advice the government got before they brought this bill to Parliament, and yet they went ahead anyway. Because we know what this government's modus operandi is around consultation. It's tell people what you want to do, Go out and ask them what they think about it, and then just go ahead and do it anyway. Forget about what people do. There's no such thing as meaningful consultation under this national government. They just do whatever they like anyway. This charter schools experiment is totally unjust, it is totally unnecessary, and it will not improve the quality of education in this country.
That's right.
Order. I call the honourable member Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker.
Tēnā koe, Catherine.
Tēnā koutou te whare. Mr Speaker, the political parties often say that we all want the same thing for our children in this country.